Hi, everyone. Today we're speaking with Terry Lynch, who's the CEO over Power Nickel. This has quickly developed into much more than a nickel story. And we like nickel anyway. It's kind of like the way Rick Roll talks about if a material is unloved or metal's unloved, that's when he wants to start looking. We're going to need nickel long term. But this is much more than that. This has become a high grade, multiple or polymetallic system they found. It's nickel plus copper plus platinum, palladium, gold, silver, great intercepts over an extended mineralized area. This is quickly turning into quite a story, and these types of mines are exceptionally rare. And this has attracted a technical advisor of Dr. Steve Beresford, as well as, I think, 11 billionaires. And many of these billionaires are mining billionaires. So why are they excited? Why were they able to attract Dr. Beresford? Let's find out. Let's chat with Terry and see what's next and what's happening with Power Nickel. It's great to see you again, Terry. There's very few companies where I really chase after to want to tell the story, and this is one. Right at the beginning when we spoke, I think it was back in spring when it was mainly nickel focused. I was excited, and regardless of nickel kind of getting beat up a little bit, I still was like, that's great. I mean, that's Rick Rule kind of says you look for commodities that are out of favor, but have a massive long-term macro outlook. And that would be fine if it was just nickel, but this story has developed into quite a bit more. So I was hoping you could tell us a bit about the start, how it started, and where we are today about the entire story of Power Nickel.
Sure, yeah, happy to, and great to be back. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride, basically, obviously, with a name like Power Nickel, it starts with nickel, right? So we acquired from Critical Elements the property called NISC, 46 square kilometers, just a little bit south and a little bit east of James Bay, just outside the town of Nemaska. It was a great property package. It had 3.1 million tons of historic nickel resource, about 1.5%. So that was exciting enough, and they had done it with very little drilling, like about less than 15,000 meters. So it was, from our perspective, it looked highly prospective. And then, we followed it up and obviously grew that resource where we finally posted our inaugural 43-101 on it at 7.1 million tons of around 1.13% nickel equivalent. And that was a really great first start. And we continue to add on that. The resource was found in association with ultramafic rocks. So of course, when we got the property, we mapped it, and we were obviously looking for this ultramafic rock formations and expressions, etc. And we found one in the northeast corner of the property, so to speak, about 5.5 kilometers away from what we call NISC Main. And it was associated with another EM anomaly, which was, a good indicator that there might be something down there. So we drilled it expecting to get more, 1.5% nickel type thing, which would be fine, which would be great. you get a lot of happy people finding a 1.5% nickel. Nonetheless, what we found was something quite completely different. We found our discovery hole was almost 8 meters of what was about 1 ounce PGMs, 1.5% copper, and it was 60 meters from surface. So it was quite a surprise. And obviously a happy surprise. I mean, honestly, in mining, you got to be good, but at some point you need luck. Some mother, and it's far better to be lucky than good. So I would say thank you, Mother Earth, for giving us this, bonus little bone. So that was exciting. The challenge was, of course, we hadn't anticipated this. We drilled it in a year ago, last April. And because it was a winter target, it was in a marshy area, meant that we could drill it in the winter, but not so much in the summer. So with that, we realized, well, this was super exciting. We had to wait really until it froze up again to get back at it. So we did a bunch of geophysical work and stuff so that we know the project better, going forward geophysically. And then when in January we went back in there this year, we started drilling, and over, I guess, 4 months, we drilled 16 holes, 15 of the 16 hit. And it really transformed from a nickel project to what is now we consider a polymetallic project. So what happened was we hit some amazing holes, really, each one sort of better than the next. We had, I don't know, at least, 5 or 6 holes of 10 meters or 10% copper equivalent or better, some over 20%. unheard of holes really anywhere in the world in the history of the world. So that's how good it was. And so that made us really sort of rethink what we had here. And in a funny little story, my son, who is a CFA and ex-energy analyst, and he's in min twits on Twitter based on his own analytical expertise, and so he sees stuff that I don't see. So he sent me this video of a guy by the name of Dr. Steve Beresford, who is probably, if he's not the top polymetallic scientist in the world, he's certainly in that conversation. And he was talking. He said, "Dad, watch this video." He says the guy's talking about NISC, and of course he doesn't even know he exists. So find a way to reach out to him. He could be a really key guy to get some insight from. I watched the video and thought, wow, he is really talking about NISC. And so he's really, at this stage in his career, he's looking for giant polymetallic deposits. So let me just qualify or quantify what is a polymetallic deposit. So polymetallic just simply means multiple metals, but not where you just get credits like you often do in most mines, where actually the major metal, in this case nickel, is dwarfed by the revenue stream from the other metals. So in polymetallic mines like ours, would expect maybe to get a third of our revenue from nickel, a third from copper, and a third from the noble metals, i.e. the plastic group elements, PGEs, and then gold and silver. So the world's most valuable mines are polymetallic. The biggest mine in the world, in the history of the world, is Norilsk. It's the only mine that's actually produced $1 trillion worth of material in the ground, and that's in Russia, and that's a polymetallic. And Platreef is another fine example. That's Ivanhoe, this big project that Friedland is obviously the CEO of in South Africa. So the reason why they're so valuable is that they're naturally hedged, right? So if gold is down, nickel is up. If copper is down, the PGEs are up. There's multiple ways to play it. Like in Norilsk, they have 15 paying minerals.
Yeah.
We expect to have around 11 at NISC. So making the transition to the polymetallics, when we spoke to Steve initially, he said, "Yeah, you might be onto something there." He says, "What's the plan?" I said, "Well, unfortunately, we can't. We didn't know we were going to hit this, so we didn't make any preparation."
Yeah.
So he said, "We're euchred until January of this year." So he said, "Well, let's keep in touch and let's see how it goes." So of course, once we hit it, we kept in touch with him and had a technical review with Ken Williamson and myself and Dr. Beresford. And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm in. I think you got something special there." So we hired him as a consultant first. He came over and spent about a week on the site. And his background, just so you know, he was trained at Western Mining. Western Mining is like Australia's version of Inco, effectively, and that eventually became BHP. And then he left them, and he became the chief geo at First Quantum when they made their big run. And then he went to MMG and then IGO. So 3 massive success stories. And so he's probably spent, I don't know, several $100 million exploring for polymetallics all over the world over the last 40 years. His approach is geared off of his, I guess, early education at Western Mining. As it turns out, the people that we use to actually drill, oversee the drills for us and the collection of the cores and the data storage and whatnot is a group called GeoVector. They're one of Canada's, I would say, top 2 or 3 geological consulting firms. And we've used them from the start because it's a great way for small companies like Power Nickel to leverage into great people. So as it turns out, I didn't know this, but GeoVector is actually run by ex-Western Mining guys. So they had the exact same approach to exploration, data analysis, data storage, etc. So when Steve came over, he obviously recognized this, and it turns out that the 2 principals, Steve and Joe Campbell, had actually worked at Western Mining together, probably had been in the same meetings together, had actually, one guy was running North America, the other guy was, so it was one of those weird coincidences. But as a result, Steve could hit the ground running and he felt super comfortable with the project. And then when he got on site, he saw some stuff that made him super excited. So lava that he thought didn't exist in North America, and there it was, and that was super indicative of something potentially great. So anyway, we obviously decided that Steve would be an invaluable resource for us to work with. And so he agreed to come on our board. And join the team as a technical advisor and help us guide us. And so we're executing his vision together with GeoVector and Ken Williamson on the exploration side right now. It's going super well, and I think that's sort of the history of how we went from being in Chile to getting this nickel project in Quebec, and how it transformed into a polymetallic deposit that could be an exciting world beater.
And it has developed very quickly in a challenging market. But I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I liken when you get a project like this, which is exceptionally rare, it's kind of like I'm definitely using Ford kind of promotive type of language, but I'll withhold a bit. But it's kind of like getting a BHP. You're getting a diversified miner with all of these materials in it in one project, which once again is exceptionally rare. And that gives people a lot of comfort when you're working with cyclical commodities that are in favor. One moment it's nickel's high and then lithium's low, and then another time it's the reverse. This gives you a good whack at a whole bunch of different metals that are critical for all of the transition. But not only that, but just for basic infrastructure and base metals and whatnot as well.
Yeah, no, I mean that's one of the fundamental real pluses about the polymetallics is that he's got a lot of possible economic ways to benefit, a lot of different ways that impacts your financing, right? If you had to do a stream, you got multiple streams you could do. So it really is a wonderful sort of advantage. And then if you're an investor and you're not quite sure, hey, should I be betting on copper? Should I be betting on precious metals? Should I be betting on nickel? Should I, maybe this is a way to bet on just a great discovery that's going to win regardless of which metal really takes off. And I think that's sort of the underlying thesis on the investment side, is that look at it from an exploration play, from an asymmetric risk perspective. I'm first and foremost, I'm an investor. I'm invested in Power Nickel as an investor. I don't need a job. I'm here just to create shareholder wealth. And for myself, my family and I are the biggest shareholder. So we're preaching with our own checkbook. So we're always we're prepared to take risk, but we don't like to take a lot of risk, and we like a lot of reward. And what I like about this project is that it continues to evidence a lot of upside. And right now, I feel like we've done enough that I'm sure. I mean, I know if I put this thing up for sale, I would sell it for multiples of where we're at right now. Now,
Yeah.
would I do that today? No, it makes no sense, because let's go out there and execute, and let's get it 10 times more or 50 times more. I mean, that potential is there. And it's like, that's, really rare. This, so that's what's compelling about the story, is that the asymmetric upside is exceptional. And we've got the resources now, both in the cash that we've raised, and in the people that we've brought to the project to, expertly explore this in the most, efficient, risk-adjusted way.
And maybe let's just talk about some of the people, because there's not many projects that attract the number. And once again, I think this is useful because people who don't know mining as well, and we'll get into some of the nitty gritty of the numbers, they'll look to see, well, who's involved in the project, because that might give them some credibility or make them feel a bit more relaxed about it. But you guys have about like 11 billionaires involved in this story. And that is pretty insane to think. For if someone looks to go, oh, you're a penny stock looking for power nickel, you've got that many billionaires involved. That kind of speaks volumes as to what you're working with and what the potential is.
Yeah, you know what, and they've all been sort of hard fought to get them, because obviously you got to go through gatekeepers to meet these people, and obviously they didn't get to be super rich by being stupid. So they have the best advisors, and they ask the tough questions, and they do their due diligence. And they usually tiptoe in, and then they start to get confidence, and obviously write bigger checks. So we've been super fortunate to get these people involved. And in the last little while, it's been not just financial billionaires, but mining billionaires, and that's a different animal.
Yes.
So getting Rob McEwen was the first really to step up in a big way. And Rob often is that guy in junior mining. He's often an early stage guy. Great Bear is a perfect example of his work there, and many others. And then of course Robert Friedland in the last round, he was our biggest investor, and he had a small piece before, but it was just eyeballing it. And then obviously It was funny when I met him in New York. He said to me, he said, I've never seen copper numbers like this. And obviously he's seen more copper numbers than probably anybody. And he said the copper in PGMs, he says that shouldn't happen. So he says there's only two explanations. He said either you salted the core or it's a duck-billed platypus. And a straight face, That's like the first time I'm meeting the guy. I started laughing, and then he started laughing. He says, "Yeah." He says, "I know you didn't salt the cores. I know you don't even touch them." So he said, "You wouldn't be here if I thought that." But he said the duck-billed platypus is, of course, an unusual creature, but it exists and it's rare. So he says, what I found in mining is that when you find something rare and it happens, he says, that's when you want to be there. He says, I think this is going to be special. So that's why I'm in.
And
So,
with
obviously I was interesting, commentary and there's no guarantee even with Rob McEwen and Rob Friedland that this is going to be Nirvana, but, it does give one, confidence that these guys stepped up with significant sums because they make a lot more right bets than they did wrong ones. My perception is that in my mind this will be a mine. Okay, that's just me. I believe this to my core. It's a question of how big the mine will be. You know what I mean? And that's the neat thing is that it could be super big because polymetallics are super rare, but when they come, they can be monsters. So right now we have Nisk Main, which is in the sort of the southwest part of our property, 5.5 kilometers away from what we call the Lion Zone, where the big polymetallic push is. So 5.5 kilometers. Imagine a strike length of that. But these things can stretch for 20 kilometers. I mean, so we don't know. We're doing some things process wise that Steve has sort of got us doing. That's looking at connecting the dots. He thinks there's really sort of two principal theories here. He says most likely Nisk Main and Lion Zone are connected subsurface. That's the most likely scenario. Alternative scenario is that there's another nickel sulfide project separate from Nisk Main that's closer to the Lion that we haven't found yet. His belief is that what happens in these polymetallic deposits to the most part is the nickel sulfide acts as sort of the oven, and it's deeper because nickel is associated with iron and sinks usually 500 meters to a kilometer and a half, 2 kilometers deep in the earth. And what typically happens on the polymetallics is some hydrothermal action happens and carries the copper sulfides up to the surface, and then they precipitate at different temperatures. And you end up, what happened, with Lion Zone is they got trapped between these two plates, and this just kept pulsing like a geyser, and it just kept on pulsing until it ran out of energy. But that's why it was so super high, great. And his view is, he said, well, that stuff is rare in the world. It's not rare in the polymetallic world. When you do find them, he says these silos, these chutes, as he calls them, are common. And he says that's the cherries. Those are the things you got to find to lead you down to the what will be a much bigger ore body underneath. That will be probably nickel dominated with copper and smaller amounts of PGMs, typical classic nickel sulfide project. But he says those copper sulfides, which will be some case copper centric, some case gold and silver centric, some case PGE centric, and he says he believes there'll be zinc centric ones as well. So he says those are sort of the really profitable stuff you'll find up top that'll help you drive down to the bigger action underneath. And so that's really what we're trying to do is we're going through a process right now to systematically identify the extensions of the Lion Zone, but also the other potential Lion Zones that are out there, and then to also find and follow those down to what we think will be the bigger prize that lies beneath. So, and again, as I said, if we just simply had what we have right now, I believe that would be economic to be put into a mine. But it looks like it could be a lot bigger, and that's what we're trying to sort of prove up here over the next, 18 months, I'd say.
one of my favorite things is to have, if you have a comparable, but this is I have to be very careful here. But I watched a video where Dr. Beresford was speaking about your project, and he was saying that it was comparable if Norilsk was to be found today. This is kind of what it would look like, and that really caught my attention because I think a lot of people don't understand how big, especially people that are new to mining, how big Norilsk is. I mean, it's been around for about 100 years producing,
Yeah.
and the number of mines on it. It's incredible. And on top of that, one other thing I heard was, has it produced 10 million of gold as well?
20 million ounces.
20 million ounces. So
Yeah, he had asked me
yeah, that's yeah,
because it was funny. I was trying to when we were doing the technical review with him, I was trying to give him an analogy because I think analogies are great, but I didn't really have one at the time. You know, I said it's not like Voisey Bay because it's got the precious metals and stuff like. And I said it's not like this other gold project in Quebec because it's got the base metals. And he said, no, no. He says I know what it's like. Oh,
yeah,
I said, okay, what's it like? He said, well, it's like Norilsk. Like, I nearly fell off my chair. He said, look, I'm not saying you're going to be the next Norilsk,
yeah.
but and that's his point. He's saying, but if you were to find one, this is how it would start, right? And that's his whole point is that you know that these polymetallics have in many cases been misunderstood, and he's got a different approach to these things, and obviously been quite successful with them on how they should be approached exploration wise. So we'll see what Mother Earth has got in store for us. Obviously, we'll whatever is there, I'm confident we'll find it, and we'll just see how big it possibly can be. But I mean, the good news is, you know, again, going back to this asymmetric risk perspective, is that you're betting with house money now. We're very undervalued right now with what we've already discovered right
Yeah.
now, in my view, relative to our peers. And we've got all this massive upside with the top guys in the, you know, both financial and mining world and the brain mining world saying, hey, this is where we want to spend our time and money. You know, this is, you know, I think an excellent risk reward opportunity.
Well, because of it being a polymetallic and this type of project now, and I'll go on from someone who's more of a neophyte and newer to my space, is that almost doesn't matter what the economy is like, what whether this election, that election, what happens when you have that type of project with this type of metals in it. It's just significant. Like it's
Yeah,
not like you're chasing
you're
after.
gonna get paid.
You're going to get
It was
paid.
interesting. Dr.
Yeah,
Beresford, you know, has got some great slides. One of them is he shows a nickel price slide, cost of nickel out of the ground, and because you know because you touched on this at the outset how nickel is sort of like a four-letter word, even though it is a six-letter word. But you know what people don't recognize with nickel, there's a couple nuances that I'd like to bring to the audience. One is not all nickel is the same. So North American nickel is quite different than Asian nickel, African nickel, and Australian nickel. Number one reason why is the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. basically requires North American automakers, if they want to be able to provide subsidies to their consumers, the $7,500 subsidies, they have to have a certain percentage of North American content. Okay, in the EVs, it's very hard to get there if you don't have nickel from North America, either sourced here, mined here, or processed here. So that makes North American nickel different, which is important. Second thing is in the polymetallic situation, he has a great chart, Dr. Beresford, where he shows Norilsk's cost of nickel out of the ground, something like 250. So when you get a polymetallic, your cost is so low. So Indonesian nickel can't compete with that. Not that it would be relevant because it doesn't qualify for IRA, but
yes,
even so. So his whole thinking is that look, it doesn't really matter. You're going to make money on the nickel too because of the low costs. You know what I mean? And there's still healthy margin there. And then of course we have our own approach to nickel where we're working with CDMR on the nickel powder business, which is a completely another you know significant opportunity for us that's you know has to be discussed at some point. But there's ways to mitigate that. But yeah, I mean we're in I think great shape that way, and you know I think that's you know really a positive attribute for the project.
that highlights how important moving forward, uh, because politics plays a role, especially nowadays. I mean, Norilsk, without saying, is in Russia, so that
Yep.
is a no-no, and that relationship isn't going to smooth over anytime soon. So we know that's an issue. So to be able to find something that's even a whisper of possibly comparable, and it's sitting in Quebec in North America, that is so appealing to well, it should be appealing to all Canadians, but certainly the U.S. to look and go, holy smokes, this is what we're looking for. This type of thing where we can reach out to our neighbors in the north who have a resource rich country to find something of that size and scale would be absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I know we've had conversations. I was in Washington, D.C. at the Strategic Metals Conference down there, gave a presentation, and then after the presentation, this guy conducted me. And he says, "I want to do an offtake deal with you." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hi, my name is Terry." It's
Yeah.
like, and it was funny. It turns out this guy is the chief procurement officer for the Navy for their new frigate program, and he says we need lots and lots of nickel, so and domestically supplied, and so it's interesting how China has been strategically doing this for a long time. They've got a 30-year head start on us all, and good for them for being so thinking ahead. But the Americans, once they wake up to something, they wake up and they get after it. So they're getting after it now. It's already tied to population and energy consumption. You look at AI, which didn't even exist, what, 5 years ago? Today, it's the hot thing, and it's expected to maybe consume almost 10% of the energy supply of the world. Think about that. I mean, that's a scary number. So when I say when people talk to me about the energy transition, I say, yeah, we need a lot more energy of every kind: oil and gas, storage energy, wind, solar, uranium. I'm a big believer in nuclear. We need all of it,
Yeah.
because if we want to live in a modern society, we're going to need a lot of energy. And there are ways, there's a lot of productive ways to do these things in an environmentally friendly way. We're big on being the world's first carbon neutral polymetallic mine. So we think there's our approaches that we can use to develop our resources that don't have to be a drain on the environment, can be at least net neutral, and ultimately produce products that can make us all, more energy self-sufficient and greener. So, I think there's technology has come a long way, and we just need to be smarter. It doesn't mean I think it's wrong to point the finger at oil and gas, say oil and gas is bad,
Yeah.
or nickel is bad. That's just stupid. All these things can be used an appropriate way, and we need them all. And we just need to be smarter about how we use them, and how we execute going forward.
And when you mentioned the EV story and with Kamala and Trump and whatnot, it kind of I thought again back to Power Nickel, and I thought, well, you're kind of hedged as a diversified project already anyway, because you've got the platinum group metals, you've got the nickel for the electric vehicles, but also for hybrids, you still need tons of platinum group metals as well. So
Yeah,
I look at that, as you were saying, like we've got different tools on a tool belt, and they'll apply in different regions, and they'll be better use one place compared to another. And if we
yeah,
look at things in that manner, you guys are hedged on many different fronts. But it also then people they feel like the rhetoric of the conversation gets toned down a bit and go, yes, for certain regions and certain places, there are better tools, more economic, and that make more sense. And I think that message gets received by people a lot better as well.
yeah. I agree. I agree. And I think the it'll be interesting. I mean, for sure, you look at copper right now; it's a bit soft. But if you look at the copper, the mine development curve, and the demand approach, we're going to be a serious copper shortage within a couple of years, maybe even next year. And that's without really scaling the electrical rebuild that is so desperately needed, not just in North America, but pretty much around the world, because we need more electricity for all sorts of things, including AI. But things are going to get real, because unfortunately it takes a long bloody time to get a mine in operation. All these the demands have been as more people are born and as energy consumption goes up. I mean, that's relentless. It just keeps on coming. And we're not anywhere close to being able to sort of handle that in our society. So the processing, what I think they say it takes typically, I don't know, from discovery to mine, I don't know, close to 20 years, and that's just too long. I mean, the some of it's a bit of a nuance, because it's like, in theory, NISP was discovered 15 years ago, so it's really only stepping on the gas in the last 18 months. So it wouldn't take us 20 years from when we started 18 months ago, but it might take us, I think for us, probably 2029 is the number, when we could get producing there. But you do know that it's just very slow, and we need to get more of them going. But I guess the other thing that it does is for the people that have real viable projects that are going to get through the gauntlet, the future for those guys has got to be exceptional, right? I mean, and so in that way we think we're blessed, and that it will be. You look at we have a slide in our presentation where we show the equity versus commodity slide, and right now the commodities are at the bottom of the trough, and equities are up here. And in the history of time, mostly it's sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen is, and I tell people this all the time, the best move in investing is to go from bad to less bad. And so commodities are bad right now. Okay. They're going to go to less bad, and that's a triple.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they go to good, it's a 10 bagger.
Yes.
So it's like, and good is coming, but we're going to go from bad to less bad. And that's why I've been saying to people since February last year, I was in Vancouver, and I said, time to put half your chips on the table.
Yeah.
And then in April, I said, it's time to push it all in.
Yeah.
And I really believe that people need to, seriously look at the mineral sector overall, and get off their wallet, because these are going to be lifetime changes for families that invest in the sector. And obviously, you got to pick your investments wisely. And if you're not comfortable choosing individual stocks like Power Nickel, buy a good mining mutual fund. You know what I mean? Those guys are smart guys
Yeah.
and girls, and they'll deploy the money well, and you'll feel like you're winning, because the scariest part is, and I know a lot of people will be listening to this, and unfortunately they will not act.
Yeah.
That's just because it's natural. It's the most common thing in life, and I've done it myself, where I listened to somebody and said, hey, yeah, sort of like that idea. I like what they're doing. I like that company. That, she's got a great idea. And then for a reason you don't act. And then the thing spikes, and you think,
Yes.
another one missed. And once it spikes, you never get in. You just can't bear it, because I was supposed to buy it at 20, and now it's at 60. But what they don't recognize is that, hey, the one that went from 20 to 60 might go to $6
Yes.
or $30. And it's like, so you missed the 40 cents. Who cares? Don't
Yes.
miss the next $4. That's
Yes.
the message. But I mean, help yourself get over there by putting more of your money. If you've had X dollars, and you've got most of it in general market and in tech, take a chunk of that and put that chunk oversized, overweight, into commodities, and figure out your commodity investment by talking to an advisor. But definitely that's going to pay off, because this baby, when it turns, and it's turning now, it's there. It was interesting. I don't know if you know Lion Investment. They're a fairly legendary mining investment firm. They're famous for their mining investment clock. And they basically time it from boom to bust and all the way around the horn. So now it's like turn to 4 o'clock, which is when mergers start to happen, and it's just, now's the time to, like, it's go time. So I think I'm a big believer in where you can ride with the macros. Make sure
Yeah.
the macro, because a good tide will float all boats. So that'll give you a lot of safety from an investment perspective. So I think we're coming into that good tide time for mining stocks overall, and so that'll give you some comfort, and I think that's something to keep in mind.
I'm glad you touched on the time frames too, as well, because I was speaking to someone and they said, well, Andrew, I mean, look at the nickel price, and copper's kind of fallen off. Goldman's not in love with copper as much anymore. I was like, yeah, but hold on. I'm not talking about trading, for one, two, and I'm not talking about someone who's producing today. I said, what's the long-term outlook? I mean, are we going to stop using copper? Are we not doing the transition? And they kind of stop for a second. They go, oh yeah. I was like, yeah, if you should be looking for these things that are out of favor. People go, oh, I don't want to look at those ones because they're out of favor. You go, that's exactly what you want to be looking for, because other people think, I'm not going to look at that one. I'm going to look at the hot commodity. It's like, well, your exploration, you're developing into something. That's a great time to be looking, because you're looking years down the road. And that macro, that's not changing. I mean, the like you'd mentioned, the demand is massive. and also where that comes from, which you touched on as well. Like the U.S. is looking for near-term supply. They're not looking to, bunker tanker stuff over from Indonesia and China and whatnot.
Yeah.
If they can get something right, like close, and they can, even on a rail, that's a lot better, cleaner option than using bunker fuel shipping things over. That's not quite the ESG story that they want to tell.
Yeah, and the cool thing with being in the polymetallics is that we got a significant chunk of gold and silver in this deal.
Yes.
I'm on the record of saying we'll have, in my view, we'll have multiple million ounces of gold, I believe, at the end of the day. So, I mean, as a gold story, it would be exciting.
Yeah.
So as a silver story, it'll be exciting. That's the neat part is there's a number of wheels on this cart, and that'll make rolling a lot easier. And I think that as he sort of correctly put it, the base metals, which may be down today because we've got economic sort of woes and oversupply, and the war and all the stuff is sort of hit all these things. But the fundamentals of those things are so compelling. A couple of years out, and it takes you 4 years to build a mine, from scratch to finish. In terms of permitting and construction. It's going to be just a tremendous time to have any of these assets, and particularly if you're in a safe geological and jurisdictional location like Quebec and Canada. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons, and people, I think in this society it's probably somewhat social media driven. The dopamine effect of like getting liked or the
Yes.
trends and these 8-second clips, and it's all sort of funny, great little meme, and it's made people so short term. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm the world's worst trader. Don't even try. I'm just a crap trader, but I'm a really good investor. Again, I'm not perfect, but I've made more good investments than bad, and only because I don't try and trade them. I try and find really good core fundamental business processes that I know that over time that's going to get paid.
Yes.
Okay. And I can never predict exactly when I'm going to get paid, but I will get paid. And when I get paid, it's multiples. I'm not
Yes.
looking to make 10 or 20% in power nickel. I'm looking to make 10 or 20 times my money.
Yes.
Okay. And I hope it's more than that. But that's my mindset when I'm going into these deals. And that keeps you focused on grade, on jurisdiction, on how deep is this. I mean, things that are, that doesn't matter how bad the economy is. If you got 10% copper equivalent, you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to get paid lots of money.
Well,
So that's what people need to focus on. And then what they have to be careful of is, grade can be your enemy too. I mean, it's like having a billion tons of low grade, it's tougher. It's just a tougher animal. It can be done. And I suspect some of these ones, at least I think one or two of them will be made into mines this cycle. But again, much more economically sensitive and risky. So I'm always like, again, as an investor, I prefer to invest in grade and jurisdiction. Those are and community risk. Those are among the most critical things I look at as personally as an investor. I want to feel real comfortable with, because there's a lot of ways to lose money in mining, and if you can eliminate those by just choosing good projects up front with lots of good grade that are in good jurisdictions that have community support, you've eliminated a lot of mining risk, and that's so key.
And no one can take away from you guys have the grade already. I mean, you've proved, which that's a very big chunk of the problem, has having such incredible grade. And one would argue, okay, you need to scale. That if you really want people to, like, tons of eyes, you want this thing to leap off the page, it's then the scale. So what's the steps here to expanding this out and getting that scale?
Yeah, so scale is about drilling, right? And you need to prove up resources. So we're doing that now. We've got about an 8,000-meter program ongoing. It's going to just be finishing up the summer portion of it by in mid-September as we take moose break, until mid-October. And so we'll actually have an update out next week. Exploration update just before Beaver Creek on Tuesday. So that'll come out and we'll give people a bit of an update. Then assays from the summer program should start to trickle in end of September, we think, early October. And then you'll see, again, I think, further expansion of the lime zone. And so we're in our summer program this summer, with Steve Beresford's advice, with talking with the GeoVector and with Ken Williamson, their input was we're going to do two sort of objectives this summer. One is to expand the line zone, which you'll see the results of shortly. So that's coming along very nicely. And then the second thing is Steve is of the view that with these projects, these shoots, like right now, I think the public disclosure on the Lion Zone is 350 meters wide by 375 meters deep, something like that. I believe that was in our last release.
Yep.
So the width of them typically in these shoots in the Archean belt, if the width is X, the depth will be 8 to 10 times X. But Steve tells me in his experience that these zones can disappear for 50, 75 meters, just drop out, and then they'll reappear. Okay. And he says what he's found historically, in all the hundreds of millions of dollars they've spent exploration wise at First Quantum and MMG and IGO, that a combination of downhole EM and geochem and ground EM are the key sort of components to help you find the zones and the extensions. So he says, so we're doing right now, we've done, I think, 4 1,000 meter holes, purposely, we've done it in parallel to structure where we're not anticipating to hit any ore body. We're actually going down, which is an expensive hole, when you think of it, but it's basically research. We put the downhole EM tools there, that'll vector out and identify where these zone extensions are and where the next ones are, and then we'll be able to drill much more cost effectively. So we're doing, sort of, short-term pain for long-term gain, but the long-term gain really will happen starting in October. Mid-October, right now we got 2 rigs out there, but once we identify these prospects, we might have 4 rigs. You know what I mean? So we're going to get after it. This is not a job, for life. We want to find this resource, prove it up, and then see how's the best way to develop it. So that's the approach we're using, and we think that'll really scale this thing quite quickly. We're going to be, I think we're planning between now and the winter season, and in April we'll probably drill another 30,000 meters or so. So that that will we've probably drilled that much so far, something in that range. 24. So with right now I'm guessing we reported 7.1. We found more. Let's say we're north of 8 on the nickel side. My rule of thumb is, my guessing is we're sort of 5-ish on the copper, the line zone side. I'm expecting to at least double that in the next while, through drilling, because we're more than doubling the amount of drilling we're doing. It sort of that would be our expectation. So we're going to get some scale going here soon, and then I think the cool part about this, Andrew, is that obviously that's creating tons of amazing value just by executing on that. That would be a huge home run. But I believe, and I think Steve does too, and I think the exploration team does too, is that we're going to have this, at some point we're going to have some ideas of where this big beast is underneath here, and we're going to drill, and we're going to announce like a Voisey Bay hole where we have like 100 meters of this 3% nickel and 2% copper, and it's going to be like game over. It's like, it's like, look out, because I really feel this thing is going to be big. I think Sakatti, which is a great project that Anglo American owns in Finland, is like a 40 million ton deposit, very sort of high grade. That to me is like we should at least get there, which would be massive,
huge.
But I mean, the cool part is Voisey's Bay is 150 million tons.
And that's the
scope
of scale we're talking about.
Norilsk is over $1 billion. So it's insane how potentially big this could be. So the cool part again is that investor, that upside is free. If you believe in what we found right now, if you think that that's going to be valuable for somebody to come and make it in a mine, then it's, you're really shooting fish in the barrel, and you got all that upside, for free.
And for an investor, what is great too is the fact that you can jump in pieces. This is a long-term story. You're going to have lots of news. You can educate yourself, get excited about it, really do a deep dive over time. Because
Yeah.
you're looking for something that big, it's not just going to happen tomorrow. So it's not like, oh, I have to go all in today. It's like, no, no, no. Just like pair into a position. You can build a position into Power Nickel by looking at did they do what they're going to say they're going to do? Yes. Did they get this? Did they do that? And that gives people an opportunity to go, I can take baby steps. I can get interested. I can get very excited. And that by taking a little bit of action, like you said before, instead of just listening, going, "Oh, it sounds exciting," and then something shiny bright over here. I looked at a
Yeah,
funny
yeah,
meme, and then
yeah.
I forgot about Power Nickel. Is just
Yeah.
take the first step, take a little baby step, and watch the news. Get excited about it. Go,
Yeah,
this
put
is
it
where
on your
we're going to
screen.
get.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
100%. I mean, that's basically how these billionaires got involved.
yeah.
They got a little taste, and they started to add to it. Because we did what we said we were going to do. We executed. We've always tried to be transparent. We've tried to, we post all of our drill cores. People can get in and analyze it themselves. We're not trying to fool anyone here. We are what we are. We've put the money in the ground. We've really tried to bring the best minds and the best approach to technology to this. And I think it's been proven by our execution that it's a good process, and we're doing a good job of it.
You're doing a great job. And Terry, I know you got to run. I really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to follow up with you as much as possible because this is the type of project that, and you can't say this very often in mining, but this can become a business. That's what we always kind of look for is someone running this like it's going to be a business. And because the way it's morphed from its beginnings to something with the potential of being so big, that attracts a lot of eyes. It keeps the imagination, even during the tough times of going, listen, the stock market might be doing this, the economy might be doing this, but this is what we're going after. And it's a long-term, process that has that asymmetric upside. And that's the type of stuff that we love.
Yeah.
And we're really
Well,
excited about.
and you touched on a really key point, sort of it becoming a business,
Mm.
and would be negligent if we didn't touch on CVMR just for a second before we
Yes,
go.
yes, yeah.
And just because but sometime between now and the end of September, we'll have a feasibility study come out on potentially building a refinery with CVMR to make nickel powders for the
Yes,
uh,
yes.
the powder industry, which is electric vehicles, of course, but also the defense sector and 3D printing. So powders, for the people that don't know, are used for many different things. The US $100 bill is actually plated on a nickel plated plate made with nickel powders from CVMR. Okay, so they actually, that's the guys who we're dealing with are the largest private nickel refinery group in the world. They've caused to invest about $7+ million to make this feasibility study. I expect we'll have the results out by the end of September, and I think it's going to be fantastic. And nickel powders get between $60,000 to $80,000 a ton. LME is like 15, 16, right?
Yes, the multiple's
So
huge. Yeah.
maybe it costs an extra 4,000 or so to make it there, and then so all that margin. So that's huge. And we just came back. I was in Korea with CVMR about a month or 6 weeks ago. I've been there 5 times now, and we identified, Power Nickel identified that the Korean automotive sector really needs a North American source for powder, and we couldn't deliver it in 2027 because permitting and whatnot. We just can't get NIST built quick enough. But with CVMRs, potentially they have mine interests in Africa, et cetera. And we could build a refinery in Texas that could start to satisfy these guys in 2027.
Wow.
Okay, we'd be a joint venture partner in this, and then as this comes on, we could scale it. So that's some exciting news that people, again, we haven't really spent a lot of time talking about it
Yeah.
because it was like the exploration discovery story was hot, and that's what we ran with for obvious reasons. And we thought we'll wait until we get the feasibility study out, then we'll talk about how big that is. But that could just give you a sense. The refinery we built there initially would be 10,000 tons of nickel powder a year to scale of 40,000. 10,000 tons is 600 to 800 million in sales.
Yeah.
More than half of that would be profit.
Yes.
So you can
That's
imagine how big that could be. Okay,
yes.
so and then scale that, and so it's like, and then it's like that's not a mine that's going to deplete. That's like a chemical business or a manufacturing that's
Yes.
going to go forever. And Inco's got one of these, or I guess Vale now, 30,000 tons in Sudbury. It's been going forever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So Vale has got one, not Vale, but Norilsk, BHP. So that's a very big business opportunity that people have invested serious money to scale, using our project as a potential source. And now we're looking at possibly being able to act on that, this H2. So it's going to be exciting. That's an exciting business development. That's, again, and that's for free for sure. No,
Yes.
nobody's built that one. So, but I mean that's why it's Power Nickel's. This is going to be an exciting fall for us, and and now as of this morning, people could get in cheaper than Robert Friedland and Rob McEwen.
Yes.
So it's like,
Yes.
hello, it's a good time to be looking for sure.
It absolutely is. Well, it's a real pleasure talking to you, Terry, again, as usual. Uh, we're going to do a much bigger dive into that. I mean, that separate business. I mean, that could be a spinoff on its own
Yep.
down the road. That I didn't even get my head wrapped around about how attractive that is just on its own, but we'll get to talk to you again about that one
Okay.
specifically. But thanks so much for taking your time out. This is a huge story. And like I said before, we're excited to talk about it. And we look forward to all the news that's coming out in the near term here to help move the story along.
Okay. Great, Andrew. Have a great day. Cheers
Take
for
care,
now.
Terry. All the best.
Bye.